efforts are being made to streamline these efforts within the schools? Because if a VISTA person is there for 1 or 2 or actually 1 year and then they go on, or a counselor, in our case, we're a fully funded nonprofit, we go in, if the counselor moves, usually they're gone and nobody else is left, and sometimes the principals who may know about it are either too busy or they sometimes shift too. So what guidance is being offered to the schools so that they can have these practices in place, so whoever comes in gets them a manual that says these are our partners, this is what works, and so forth? So that's one question. And then the other question is, as you make all of these fully funded providers available to all schools equally, what does that mean for us who are trying to provide these services for free to the schools, and now we're going to have increased demand? So, questions?
Yeah, so I guess the first one, there's sort of a few answers to that question. One, the VISTA project is structured with the lack of continuity in that position in mind. So the idea is that the VISTA would come in and develop tools, would conduct a needs assessment, that then when they do leave, because that's part of the project, would be useful to schools even if they aren't present in the building. So the VISTA project is structured that way. I mean, the other sort of answer to that is now with the toolkit, we've got more sort of centralized resources that are of use to schools. The lack of continuity in terms of staffing, both with district staff and with other folks in the buildings, is a huge problem. And it's something that presents challenges in terms of partnerships. Sarah mentioned that she spoke to a lot of principals where it was their first year and they're just trying to get their arms around basic school management priorities, and partnerships is another thing layered on top of that. I mean, those are things that we are having to grapple with. We don't have a lot of solutions for these larger issues, but we're cognizant of them, and the work that we are doing is really trying to keep that in mind as much as possible. So, I mean, do you all have anything to add to that? All right.
I mean, I think the capacity building is like a real piece, right? Like, never letting your relationship or your partnership be so dependent on one individual. And it's hard because that might be your champion, right? Like, maybe you only, not to minimize it, but you only have the counselor. So when they leave, that makes it really difficult. I mean, I think that the equity and the distribution question is a different one.
Right. So regarding demand, I mean, it's not as if we're just going to like release the hordes and then they're just going to all, it's I think that the way that we envision our role is that we have a conversation with you. We learn about what it is that you do, we learn about your capacity to expand, and then we also look at the data that we collected around school needs, and other relevant data points might be that your mission has other criteria that we would use to sort of filter down eligible schools, and then we just go from there. I mean, our expectation is not that you're going to be able to scale up to every single school or anything like that. Our hope is that because we have such a diverse array of partners and so many of them, that we begin to be a little better about making sure that partners getting channeled to schools that maybe aren't always in the news as a blue ribbon school, but are still very interested in the work that you're doing.
Are there efforts underway to maybe help match some of those partners with funding sources? So it can continue?
Well, so one of the things that we're sort of planning to do, so our office has a strategic plan sort of for this year and beyond, and our hope is that we will use, I mean, we're sort of riding the momentum of this partnerships coordination document being released, and also we're going to release this document around need areas. One of the things that we're sort of planning to do is engaging funders around this is what schools say they need. It gets a little tricky in terms of we don't want to be biased around certain partners and funders and advocating only for certain partners, but we are really sort of issuing the call that says this, mental and behavioral health services. I mean, that's all sort of intuitive for most people that work in schools, but this is something that needs to be funded, and we have partners out there that maybe are poised to do that work. So we're sort of seeing the call being issued that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do know that there are organizations that sort of do the back end work to help, and I don't know what they are, to help specific charities themselves go after funding, and maybe finding a way to link with them would be.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of?
I moved here 2 weeks ago, so.
But maybe after, I mean, if you
Right.
have, even if it's in another locale, I mean,
Right.
that's valuable
Right,
to
right,
us.
right.
Because as Sarah mentioned, I mean, there's other school districts that
I
have
mean,
that.
I met a nice guy in the lobby that he worked for the Urban Affairs group, that sort of thing, and they helped with, Urban Affairs Management helped manage like
Right.
human resources and stuff for small charities, but I don't know in terms of like organizations that help write grants. I mean, I know more and more universities are going to systems where they have an office specifically that helps to write grants, and all the top tier schools are doing that now because it is an art to know what that person wants to hear.
Sure.
Because often you're saying it,
Yeah.
but they're not hearing it. And so having that kind of support.
The Free Library of Philadelphia has
Right.
a subgroup that
See, she knows.
that supports fair writing.
Wonderful. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Couple, two parts. One is I think that something that's really important is this whole idea of connective tissue, that there are connections on both sides of partnerships that facilitate all the kinds of things that you all have laid out, the matching of needs, the matching of context to fit, all the things you've talked about really well. So I think that your data collection is really helpful to partners, and I think the partners being organized about what it is that they do and where they do it is helpful. So I'm at Penn GSE, and we launched a heat map last year in partnership also with you all that geographically lays out using your catchment areas what we are doing across the school district of Philadelphia. And we didn't know everything that we were doing because universities are really good at doing stuff and not good at knowing where everybody is, so we trip over each other even within a small school of education. So we found out that we're in every school catchment area of the district, doing 547 different kinds of activities. So that's something that helps us and also helps you in looking at what do we do for you as a partner, and that's something that we are maintaining live annually. So I think that, again, as partners, the more we are organized and that our organization fits the kind of questions you're asking, that helps to facilitate these kinds of
That's
things.
huge, yes.
The other, and I'll give you the link, it's phillymap.gse.edu.
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really, and our IT department is developing an app, which I know Dan was interested in. Other areas of Penn were interested in, that will help other institutions set up something similar. The other question, though, that I had, and this related to Kelsey, to something that you brought up, is that as you look also at what makes the partnerships effective, I think somebody said that really knowing the school and the context in which you're working is critical. So while I really support your desire to be generating a real network of evidence-based, high-quality partners that you can match skills with, some partners and schools are best fits because they're right in the community. So you have the local retarees who have banded together to form WePAC and work in, where's Mika? Who are working to staff libraries. They do not have a third-party evaluator. And so that standard of requiring that for every partner, I think, is going to limit the real.
I think it's important we clarify that that is not the standard. that
Oh,
we're
yes,
doing.
because I also
Yes.
actually heard that from another
Yeah, no,
national program who we are supporting in some of our partner schools, who came to me and said, we're now told that our own evaluation is not okay, that we have to have a third-party evaluation. And I said, you need to sit down and talk to people, because I really can't imagine that that's, as long
So-
as you want an evaluation, you want to
So,
really look at what people are doing.
I apologize if I wasn't 100% clear when I was saying that there are two different tiers of partners.
Okay.
And so our goal is to continue to think about that in a more complex manner. So, not treating everyone as a blanket statement, but trying to identify that there tends to be two different kinds. So the smaller, locally based enrichment partnerships, and then the larger, federally funded or grant funded programs.
Right.
So we're trying to talk about those two separately and recognize that those smaller ones, like I was talking about, just plain enrichment ones, may not have any need or any capacity for a specific evaluation. But for those larger ones, we do require a third-party evaluator because we want to make sure that the evaluation is conducted with as high fidelity as possible.
If people at the school level think a partnership is valuable, we do not want to get rid of that partnership. I mean, I think it's really important that we establish that ethical foundation. The district does not necessarily have a reputation for always behaving that way. I mean, that's one thing that we're sort of negotiating as an office. The theme of trust came up, of reliability. Those are things that we're trying to establish with principals as we sort of roll out the office, as we create it, as we build it out. We have to be cognizant about our limited capacity. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but at the same time, these are the values that we're sort of trying to hold to in the work, because ultimately we think that will translate to things actually happening and actually supporting schools. So.
But helping schools think about what they're doing in the kind of complex way that you all have laid out will help them be able to assess their own kinds of outcomes and how they want to see partners affecting some kind of positive change. That's why they want the partners.
Any other questions?
I guess I just wanted to, I guess this is a question, but I'm not quite sure who it's for. But I actually got to be at the William Penn presentation last week and see that mock-up conversation based on the tool, and it was really great. And I sat there thinking, and then who has clearances and what time can we meet? Because, in our conversations with schools, it's like, that's usually where things start to fall apart. And I know Sarah mentioned that was what some of the principals said, like, that some of those things seem so minor, but at the end of the day, they're actually like make or break.
Yeah.
So I don't know who holds that,
Well, I can take this because this is so. Yeah, well, and we are. I mean, that's sort of two of the major things that we're doing this year. We've already met with the Office of General Counsel to figure out how we can get a better legal agreement in place, process in place for making it more efficient, ensuring that schools actually are able to get it. Right now, the MOU process is onerous. There's like drafts being exchanged. It just doesn't work with the realities where schools are. The other major thing, and this impacts partners in general because the laws recently changed, but clearances. I mean, it's an important thing. The district has a responsibility, a policy in place where it needs to verify the clearances are in place. But, so we've been meeting with the Office of Talent and the Office of General Counsel to explore how can we create a more efficient process for clearance intake, verification, and processing, not putting it on the schools necessarily to have to chase down documents or things like that. So we already have a lot of the sort of IT solutions in place to do that because we just had to do it for all of our staff, all of our teachers. So the idea is how can we leverage that work and get partners going through that same system. Again, because we're cognizant of the fact that red tape, all of these things are impediments to just getting to the actual work and establishing a partnership. But at the same time, the district has policies that it needs to abide by and be compliant with. So again, part of our role is working with other offices in the district to help them see the way that we see schools and relay what we're hearing from schools and trying to sort of align those two things. So.
I think just to piggyback on that, we were very intentional about including districts, the academic district, as having a key focal role. And this we heard from a lot of people, like, there's not that many districts that do this, and that's true. That's true. When we were shaking, Boston also has some work. I mean, there's certainly others, but maybe it's not, quite as visible or as organized, as what we have here in Philly in particular. But we really tried to think about this as being somewhat aspirational, right? That districts could do this because some of those things, like talking to general counsel, that's just not on the to-do list of an instructional leader in a building or of a coordinator, right? So some of those facilitating processes and really setting that that culture and climate and thinking about that.
And on the research end, I mean, some of you have dealt with me through research review. On the research end, we actually do take responsibility for collecting clearances for those researchers who we have cleared to be within the schools. And I'm a stickler about it. So, we all handle our responsibilities a little differently based on what our specific responsibilities are. But on the research partnership side, we definitely, we handle that burden for schools.